All right, everybody, welcome back to the Driveway Engineer. I'm JR. Today I'm joined by my cat, Brazilian Nut. You guys can't see her because she's stealthy. Today I want to talk about something that I get asked pretty often, and I usually get asked specifically regarding LS engines, but it applies to anything. This is a 2JZ and a 63 unibody F100. Any kind of engine swap you want to do at all, you can follow these simple guidelines and make it happen. So what people worry about going in, first of all, know going into this, you're going to have to do work, right? If you want to put a 2JZ in your 63 F100, you're going to have to do work. You're going to have to figure some stuff out. You're going to have a multimeter. You're going to have a way to put holes in metal and join pieces of metal together. And you're just going to have to get out there and have a willingness to figure things out. If you want a bolt-up solution, you should probably stick to mainstream stuff, mainstream swaps. But if you're willing to learn and you just don't know where to start, then this video is, hopefully will help you along your way. Especially wiring. People really get tripped over wiring, and they want to know, how do I integrate the new harness? Again, most people ask me regarding LS swaps, but it doesn't matter. I'm doing a bastard swap and a Mercedes engine into a Toyota, and this is basically the rules that I follow, to make it work. So what people ask me is, how will I integrate my new harness with the car? How will my gauges work? What about my windows? Will my radio work? How do I interface it? How do I wire it? Will the computer control this, that, the other thing? The simple answer is that none of that matters. If you're dealing with anything below like a 2005 or so, below when CAN bus came on board, if you're dealing with something that doesn't have a body control module, it's real simple, like my C10, like my 4Runner, like my D100, like an F body, G body. These are all relatively simple vehicles that, a Fox body, they all have the same simple operations. And like most things in life that seem complicated, if you break it down into pieces, it becomes much more manageable. So the number one thing that you need to do is find the 12-volt feed. What we're looking at here is this one's a bulkhead connector for my D100. And you can see here that number 2 red ignition feed. Let's go through it some more. Number 37, BK. I don't know. Oh, it's black. That is a battery feed. I'm willing to bet that that is the feed into this for, I think this is like an 83 D100. So that's what you need to do. You figure out where to feed the fuse. This bulkhead connector will feed the fuse panel. So once you give it 12 volts, all the stuff inside your car works. Your radio, your power seats, your windows up and down, all that stuff works. You'll never mess with any of these other wires, ever. And assuming you didn't just like dive in there balls deep and hack it all out. You find your battery feed. Sometimes they have more than one, so don't be fooled. The G body here that I pulled up here. Let me zoom this in a little bit. So the G body, I happen to know this already, B5, but there's also a G4 here. Is also a battery feed into that. So you might have partial power if you only feed B5, for instance. Let's look at another one here, the 3rd gen. A4, red power distribution. Let's look through the list some more. And I just found these by Googling random cars that I know you guys have that are popular. I didn't like have these. Well, I had the D100 one already. F4, pink power distribution. Pink is usually a 12-volt out. Usually they're red for GM in. G5 again. Maybe it was G4 in the other one. So if you still have your car and it still runs and you haven't torn it down yet, you can verify these with a multimeter. Your power feed going in will be just, simple. It'll either probably hook to a starter, or you'll somehow be able to trace it directly back to the battery. Like my C10 has a power distribution block on the firewall, or it had one when it was stock. And so the battery fed the starter fed this fusible link, which in turn fed the power distribution block, which in turn fed my bulkhead connector. From there, the whole truck works. There's nothing else to do. So that's the first thing, is figuring out where your power goes in. Once you have your power going in, your wipers and everything else should work. And never care if you put a 2JZ, a Mercedes diesel, an LS, Ford 302, whatever. Anything that generates 12 volts of electricity, as long as it has it, it'll never know what engine's in it. It's not going to be like, no, I love Chevy, only put Chevy engines in me. That's never going to happen. Nobody's ever going to care. It'll all work fine. From there, analytically, the simple thing to do is figure out what output triggers your starter. On GMs, we'll look at these because I have them handy. So on this G body, I happen to know that the trigger wire on a GM is always purple. There it is, E4, purple. This is the G body one. Let's look at the 3rd gen one. C5, purple wiper washer. Huh. Where's the starter wire? Starting system, purple, B4. Okay, it's there. It's just not where I expected it to find it. So what happens is when you turn the key forward with 12 volts to the start position, 12 volts appears on this wire. You can use that to trigger a solenoid, like a Ford style solenoid, or your actual starter solenoid, like my Dodge you guys saw in the previous video I uploaded. You know, it has a solenoid on the starter. I don't need to trigger it through a secondary solenoid. Then your engine will crank. So we're already like halfway to having a running engine swap, our 2JZ into a F100 or whatever we want to do. So from there, you want the coil hot wire. There's some kind of, if it was a PCM controlled vehicle, there's some kind of hot wire that's out that's going to be hot and crank and run. So again, we'll refer back to the 3rd gen. This pink power distribution, computer command, electronic fuel injection. That's going to be hot and pink and run, or hot and crank and run. So you can use that to fire your coil. You can use that to trigger your fuel pump relay. Going through these descriptions, you should be able to figure out what's feeding your coil, or what was feeding your coil or your ECU or whatever you happen to have, and use that to your advantage to run fuel. You'd also use that to power your PCM. If you have one, like on my 4Runner, I'm not going to have a PCM. It's not going to have anything, so I would already be done here. If electric, you'll have to provide power to the fuel pump and the fan, and you can use a coil trigger wire for that. Gauges is another one that trips people up. How will my gauges work? They make a ton of different adapters like this style right here. You got to figure out what your sending units were stock, and what the thread pitch on them was, and what you can use later, and you can come up with some kind of adapter. They make tons and tons of these. Here's some kind of adapter to clear. It's a small block Chevy. I don't know why they did this exactly. Probably to clear the HEI distributor maybe, or clear the firewall. I don't know. But you see, it's just plumbing fittings that he used. They're just MPT on a small block. Maybe you tap it to the next bigger size. You know, you kind of got to figure it out. You got to get in there and figure it out. But that should give you a rough idea of the stuff that you need to actually wire and hook up, and how to go about it, and how to find it, and what are the steps to do that. I'll probably do another one of these videos and cover, you know, break down motor mounts and cooling systems and stuff like that. Hopefully this will get you on your way though, and reassure you that your gauges can work, your headlights will work. You just don't mess with your car's harness at all. You don't really need to do that. Everybody gets hung up on wanting to integrate them when they're standalone harnesses. When we're talking about swaps, and specifically LS swaps, or a 2JZ swap, they sell standalone harnesses. You don't integrate them because they stand alone. You just simply wire them up, and you don't mess with the car at all. So hopefully that'll help set you guys on your way, set your minds at ease a little bit, and helps you out, know what to do, know what to look for. Obviously, I can't cover every kind of car and every kind of engine, so I have to kind of do broad strokes like this. But I hope it helps you out on your build. So thanks for watching, guys. We'll see you next time on The Driveway Engineer.